Something very interesting is going on in China, inside of China, but also in the way that China projects itself to the world. China is now portraying itself as the champion of, well, traditional values. Now, here's an article just out from CNN. China bans footballers from getting tattoos. And by itself, this is just one of those kind of trivia type of articles, kind of intriguing in and of itself. They show, it has a picture of a guy named Zhang Linping of Guangzhou, and here's a guy with a big tattoo on his neck. And evidently the Chinese have had enough with these tattoos, and so what they've done is they've issued a new directive, and they're basically saying that footballers, people who play football, need to be, quote, a good example to society. This has come from the General Administration of Sport in China, the GAS. And what they say is, listen, athletes of the national team and the U23 national team are strictly prohibited from having new tattoos. And those who have tattoos are advised to remove the tattoos by themselves. And they say that in special circumstances, I'm assuming they're assuming some kind of family significance or something like that, tattoos must be covered during training and competition after the consent of the team. So the Chinese are basically saying, we don't think the tattoos are the way to go. And as I say, by itself, this would just be nothing more than a quirk. I mean, the Chinese, by the way, do know that the practice of getting tattoos, this is not coming from traditional Chinese culture, even though some of the tattoos themselves are dragons and they're Chinese symbols, but nevertheless, the idea comes from the West. So it's Chinese athletes trying to be westernized, which is perhaps from their point of view to be cool, and the Chinese are like, cut that out. Now, this comes on top of the Chinese issuing directives. This one goes back now a few months, that they don't want their men to start acting or dressing or looking like women. They don't want so-called effeminate males. And we all know, in fact, I talked about this yesterday or the day before on the podcast, the Chinese have ordered Disney to cut out gay scenes from movies that are played in China. So even the implication of some kind of gay relationship, Dumbledore and some other guy, no, get it out. And so what's going on here is that the Chinese are not only affirming sort of traditional values at home, but this is I want to suggest, a very cunning and effective public stance for China to have in the world. Why? Because many cultures around the world, cultures in Asia, cultures in Africa, even cultures in South America, are quite traditional. And so you appeal to traditional people when you take this kind of a public stance. For a while, even the radical Muslims were able to pose as defenders of traditional values. They would say things, there are phrases that come out of some of these radical Muslim thinkers, people like Sheikh Qaradawi and others, where they would say, modernization, yes, westernization, no. And what they're basically saying is, yeah, we want Western technology, yeah, we want Western modernity, but no, we don't really want Western cultural depravity. And now the Chinese seem to be the latest who are now climbing aboard this kind of bandwagon. And it's going to appeal to a lot of people. In fact, it's going to ultimately create, in my view, anti-Americanism, even among countries that are generally well disposed toward the West. Take, for example, my native country of India. The Indians have been, over the last 25 years, I would say, the most pro-American people in the world. To such a point that the Indian enthusiasm for America, and in general for the West, has even dissipated the anti-colonial ideology of my youth. When I was young, it was fashionable to deplore anti-colonialism, attack the West, the British Empire was the great villain, and so on. But in a weird way, the Indians' affection for the American way of life, for the American ladders of opportunity, for the American dream, has made the Indians pro-Western across the board. And today, if you start railing about colonialism and so on, people think you basically have some kind of psychological problem. They don't want to argue with you. They just go to get a drink, or they leave you to yourself. And so India, in that sense, has been emotionally, psychologically, intellectually, a great potential ally for America and for the West. But you'll notice that in recent months, the Indians are tilting away from that. India, for example, has refused to go along with the big Ukraine program. Well, the democracies of the world are united uniting, and the Indians say, well, we're the largest democracy, but we're actually not getting on that bandwagon. Sorry, see you later. The Indians want to continue they're not only buying oil from Russia, but they're even buying weapons from Russia. And India also, the next step for India, which would be a devastating blow, would be a tilt toward China. And so the Chinese, again, in the strategy of we're affirming traditional culture, we stand for tradition, we stand for moderation, we stand for family. Now, the Chinese don't really do that. In fact, that's the whole point of Marxism, Leninism, is it overrides the family, it overrides the local community. So I'm not saying that this Chinese program is sincere. What I am saying is it has symbolic potency, and that by the Chinese doing this, it's going to lull other countries, or at least outwardly give them the sense that, hey, the Chinese are actually protecting the kind of values that we in our cultures want to protect. And we want to protect it from Western degradation and from Western contamination. So this could be a very successful propaganda strategy for the West. And we in America should watch it, I think, with a legitimate concern and alarm.